So I want to start with looking at like what is shadow work overall, right? So this is sort of this modern day umbrella term that basically refers to engaging with parts of ourself that operate outside of our conscious self image. So there are things that are deep seated within us, and we know that they exist, but we don't know, we're not always cognizant of them, right? And a lot of times they show up in ways that are not obvious to us, they can be to other people. We're relaying these things, but we don't have a strong grasp of what they are and what they're doing to us and what they are about, right? And so, of course, this is a psychological phenomenon in today's world when we use the word shadow work, but it absolutely relates to IFA concepts and practices. So we're going to first talk about just what it is from the modern day psychological perspective. Then we're going to dive into what this looks like within IFA practice. So, according to modern day psychology, there are two aspects of shadow work. So, you have what's known as the dark shadow and also what's known as the golden shadow. I think the dark shadow is what most people think of whenever they come in contact with this term of the shadow self, right? They're just thinking about the traits that are deemed to be adverse or negative or even so bad or wrong or what have you. Things like anger, greed, selfishness, etc. Right? Those things that we don't find desirable within ourselves and we want to get rid of. Also, there is the golden shadow. So these are actually positive traits. Things like being creative, being very powerful, being independent, autonomous, etc. Exercising your own agency, right? These things have been suppressed in within us, within some of us. So it's not everybody experiencing the exact same thing, but some people have experienced the repression of things that we consider to be good or positive, usually because they were told to quiet those things down within themselves, right? Be humble, don't speak too much, don't speak too loudly. And so sometimes people start to gravitate towards repressing or suppressing those things within them, but then they have challenges later on in life, especially if their destiny is geared towards them truly expressing those aspects of themselves, right? So in many cases, the dark shadow work is about examining those behaviors and those functions that are not going to be in alignment with social standing and social repute. So things that other people obviously do not find desirable and that could get you ostracized at a high degree, right? So these things are when you, even so, better, like subconsciously, like this is not what I should be dealing with, yet you continue to deal with it, even so, with a high level of awareness, or even with you may not know it from a moral perspective, but you just know something is off with your behavior and you do want to change it. You just may not know how to change it at that level. When it comes to the golden shadow, right? This is about understanding your feelings, understanding why you are repressing these things in your life, the things that you know are good, or society at least says are good things, right? Or the desires that you have, desires that are not going to be harmful to anybody, that are not going to be disrespectful to yourself or anybody else, but you continuously repress or suppress those things, right? And you don't know how to integrate them in a balanced way because you were told to go far left. And so you don't know how to just get it right here when obviously the behavior at some point, maybe not by you, but by somebody else, was considered to be far right. Or it could even so have been about their own insecurities, right? They saw you showing up in a certain way and they were dealing with their own shadow. And instead of them saying, wow, I wish, or I'm going to be like this because I know that I have this capacity or I desire to be like this, they tried to suppress it in you because you were showing up in a way that they desire to show up, right? So, how do people identify with their shadows? So, we're going to talk about this particular aspect from a modern day psychological perspective, and then we'll get into it from an IFA specific perspective. Like, how does IFA help us with this? Greetings, Renoverse. I see you showing up. Great to have you again. So, if you have an intense kind of over the top emotional reaction to situations, right? It oftentimes will point to some type of repressed part of yourself that is being provoked, especially when you're seeing things in other people. You see other people doing things, and you're like, well, they shouldn't be like this. And it's just really, really intense. It's too much for the situation. It's not necessitated, it's not called for in any way. It's like something that you could have just let be and kept on moving. But you dig into it, and that's usually because it is something that you yourself are dealing with internally, and you can't really stand or see somebody else dealing with it in a certain way that you desire to deal with it. So you get angry with them, right? It also shows up with people just being really, really highly judgmental of certain traits in other people. That's usually a signal that you're subconsciously suppressing something within you that needs to come out, right? So you may see somebody else out, and maybe they're talking to everybody, and they're just moving through the crowd or the room like a social butterfly, and you get really, really upset, like, why is she talking to everybody in the room? Like, this person makes me sick. They don't need to do all of that. They just need to sit down and be quiet, and so forth and so on, when that person's behavior has no impact on you at all. Like, it's different if they're running around talking to everybody and talking about you or talking about your business, but their conversations, their actions, their activity has nothing to do with you. It's not detrimental or even so beneficial to you in either way, but you have a strong emotional charge for what they're doing. That's a sign that you need to do some work in that particular area, right? Also, if you find yourself being too heavily critical of your own self, because it shows up that way a lot too, where people have repressed certain aspects of themselves and they're trying to achieve a level of perfection, as it were, in one or multiple areas of life. And this is usually because they've been told that they were defective or deficient either in that area or maybe another area. So they're trying to make up for it in another way, right? So it may not be that exact particular trait or skill that they're trying to be perfect about, but they're trying to overdo it. We see this a lot in people who are like workaholics. They're overcompensating for something else in their life. And it may not be anything work related, but at some point in their life, they may have been made to feel inadequate in a certain space. And so they go overboard trying to make up for it in another way, such as maybe work, or even so it could be in relationships, because that happens a lot too, where people try to give their all and just be all to someone else because they didn't have that there for them. They didn't have somebody there for them, or somebody told them that they were deficient in some way. And so they try to give every aspect of themselves to another person. And, instead of really going in and dealing with the part of them that they need to deal with. Okay. So what aspects of a person's self are they seeking to address through shadow work? All right. So usually this is when somebody is noticing certain patterns or behaviors that they ultimately don't like. They just keep persisting in that person's life, and that person is trying their best to overcome these particular aspects of themselves, but they just can't get their finger on it. Okay. It also shows up quite often when a person is just not ever fully process certain experiences, especially things like childhood trauma, sexual abuse, things of that nature, family dysfunction holistically, and that's going to come under the umbrella of the ancestral aspect, which I am going to dig into because that can absolutely impact you from a shadow perspective. It can leave you with some, shadow residue that you need to clean up. And it doesn't even really belong to you. It came from your family line, but you got caught in the onslaught of that generational pattern being passed down from person to person. And then also PTSD experiences. We as a whole, Black people in particular, right, we suffer from post-traumatic slavery disorder. Herein, PTSD standing for post-traumatic syndrome disorder, which is a thing, but in particular with us, we're dealing with the aftermath of slavery that was never dealt with. So a lot of people are impacted by that, and they're experiencing shadow aspects of themselves by not really fully showing up and as themselves. You see that a lot because during slavery and then post-slavery periods, Black children, Black people were not allowed to read and write and do things of an intellectual capacity. So anytime somebody would try to step up and do that, or even if a child was just smart, a lot of times their parents would try to pull them back to keep them from getting hurt, killed, or what have you during that time. So a lot of Black people, unfortunately, have suppressed it. And I should say Black Americans. Let me preface that because you see this a lot in the Black American community where being, a nerd or not being smart or intelligent, or at least not showing forth your intellectual prowess, was deemed as something, not good for you to be smart or intelligent. A lot of that came from the slavery era. And so parents just kind of condition themselves and condition their children to not show that aspect of themselves. And there's a lot of repression going on in that space. And we see it in social media all the time, where you see a lot of people showing up, presenting the more the negative aspects or traits of themselves rather than that positive aspect, showing forth their intellectual prowess and who they really are and what they're capable of. A lot because of this. Do have a comment over here. You said family dysfunction, holistically. Wow, I never thought about it that way. That's powerful. Yes, absolutely. It is, because we don't realize how deep it goes within our generational bloodline, and it's passed down from generation to generation. And you see these patterns showing up, and the manifestation is symptomatic a lot of times, and you don't even realize that it is actually something internal that you need to deal with. You just see it manifesting in different ways through yourself and or through your bloodline. Some people also seek to understand why they feel just internally conflicted, like they are trying to change, they just keep remaining stuck. They're doing everything under the sun, right? They do the meditation, the yoga, the breathing exercises, the journaling, the reflection, whatever it is, psychology, they, do it all, go on these really large retreats, et cetera, et cetera. And they're still having challenges in this particular area. And that's because they really haven't gotten to the core of it, which I'm going to get to shortly, right? So that's about the gist of it. When somebody comes to this space, it's because they know something is wrong. They know that something is off. They feel stuck. They can't move forward, and they're just trying to seek how to get to that next level. Okay, so what does it attempt to resolve? How can it help you? Why should you engage in this process, right? So usually it's going to be resolved that in dealing with those ongoing internal processes that you're dealing with that interfere with your ability to achieve whatever the desired outcomes that you wish to achieve in your life. And it could be something definitely grandiose where it comes to prosperity, making money, living in a certain neighborhood, having a certain vehicle, so forth and so on. But you just feel like you are stuck in a certain place. A lot of times when it comes to material aspect, it has to do with limiting beliefs when it comes to wealth, money, finances, prosperity, things like that. Or it could just be something emotional. It doesn't always have to be in the physical realm. It could just be emotional instability, emotional uproar, dealing with things, like anger, dealing with things like jealousy, dealing with things like just crying a lot. I see this a lot when people are dealing with shadow work. They're really emotional, whether it's actual tears or just kind of moodiness, depression, so forth and so on. Because a lot of times they're repressing things, and so it manifests in their outpouring of either tears or some other type of emotional repercussions. Okay, let's see. Alafia, good. Thank you for joining. Didn't know you were going to show up today. So it can show up in that way as well. Many people see shadow work as a way to basically reduce self sabotage, because that's ultimately what it ends up being, is that they continuously sabotage their efforts, their holistic destiny, right? Where they should be going and what they should be completing in this earth, because they're dealing with so many repressed emotions or whatnot. They're constantly resisting themselves, resisting what they know to be true. Because the reality is, a lot of people actually know what to do and what way to move forward, but they are stuck because they're dealing with these contradictions within themselves. So that's why a lot of people engage in this particular process. Why do they still feel stuck though after starting to engage in shadow work? And that's a big thing as well, because as I said before, people do all of the work that they know how to do and they still can't move forward a lot of time. So most people start with the psychosocial aspects of shadow work. They start and stop there, I should say. Right? They just focused on that aspect of it, because the notion of shadow work is heavily psychological in its nature, but they don't look at it from a holistic approach, understanding that it's also spiritual and physical. Okay, physical from the perspective of you taking care of yourself. Some things have a lot to do with you not being nutritionally replete, nutritionally sound. And that has to do with, the emotions. It has to do with the family patterns. It has to do, even so, with the spiritual. That's why I would always encourage people to start at the spiritual level, because spiritual can tell you what's going on and what to do about it. Because it may be like you need to, intake enough vitamins and minerals or what have you, so that your body can even so function well for you to regulate your emotions properly. A lot of people are dealing with that reality in today's world, and they just don't even know it. It could be herbal remedies and things like that. Okay. Many people mistake insight also for resolution. So like, I got the why, I know what's going on with me, but they don't move beyond that, because they just think, that awareness means that it's resolved. And we see that even so a lot with people getting EFA readings. They come and get the insight, they get the knowledge. And even so, in some cases, they do the EBO and the kosher, but they don't do the work when it comes to behavioral modifications. They feel like they can continue to live a certain way. All of that work is done to help you balance out, to help stabilize you, to help propel your energy to get you to the next level. And it does that, but you have to stay the course. When you're shown these things, and you do Ori alignment work through the tradition, your Ori is going to speak with you so much more. Your intuition is going to be heightened, but you have to be ready for that reality. It's not just about, oh yeah, Ori is showing me this and doing this for me, and you're not heeding the warnings of Ori. You may be going somewhere and Ori's like, don't go down this path, but this is what you desire, so you just gonna keep on moving. And that's not how it works. You still have to put in the work from your end as well. And you're saying awareness does not equate to resolve. Absolutely. It just doesn't, and it's a great thing to know. It's an important thing to know. But once you know, what do you do with that information? That's the most important part of it, right? People also oftentimes avoid kind of putting in the work due to discomfort, right? It's not easy to make change, especially when things have become habitual. You're used to it. It's your way of being. Even so much so, like we as humans, we deal with things, we put up with things because it's what we know is familiar to us, not necessarily because it is beneficial for us all the time. And oftentimes people know like something is not beneficial for them and they continue in that space just because it brings them comfort, right? The unknown is uncomfortable no matter how beneficial or meaningful it is to us. And some people just kind of stay stuck in that space because they don't want to move outside of their comfort zone. So this is why, it just feels like it doesn't work sometimes. And it's usually because the person isn't working it, so to speak, right? That being said, there are so many benefits of engaging in shadow work from so many different perspectives, right? So, number one, when you stop ignoring or projecting your insecurities on others, or even so, in your own life, right? Your interactions become more authentic. You stop having a lot of the conflict that you deal with due to you not full on expressing yourself and maybe getting angry or upset with other people because they are expressing themselves in a way that you desire to do so, right? You absolutely become more creative and productive. That energy that you are using to suppress your feelings, to suppress your emotions, to suppress vital aspects of your being, your creativity, etc., gets to shine through. You get to allow it to come out and it will naturally just manifest and unfold. And you can utilize that to help yourself to propel to the next level and even so to help other people. But you have to be willing to implement the tools and do the work that it takes to get there, right? It also leads to a sense of just self acceptance. You begin to accept who you are, flaws and all. And this is a very deep and important space to get to in life because oftentimes, especially women, right? Especially women, because women are often told that they are deficient, right? Well, it's changed now, but like back in the day, most of the adverts and things like that were pushed towards women to get them to buy products to change, their hair, their look, their aging, their wrinkles, and all of these types of things, right? So that was all about commercialization. You buy this, and obviously the retailer makes money from you getting that. So they're going to continue to push the message to make you feel self-conscious. But when you get into a space in life where you just accept yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just holistically for who you are, that's a really deep space to get in. And then you can start doing the work. It doesn't mean just sit there either, right? Self acceptance doesn't mean just, okay, this is just who I am and it is what it is. It also means that you are willing to and you're going to try to do the work to get yourself to the level that you were meant to be, especially when we're talking about a tradition like Ifa, because Ifa is all about character development. And that's what we're going to go into next, as far as looking at shadow work from the perspective of the Ifa tradition. What does that mean and what does it look like? Got a few comments before I get to that. He said, Ashe, I've definitely been that person that kept engaging in habits that I knew weren't in alignment with my Ori solely because it was easier to do. Yeah, you and me both. Been there, done that. Until Ori was just like, hey, you got to get it together. Are you going to keep experiencing these issues in life? He said, bless up and thank you for the work of Ifa. I'm a devotee, need for insight. So how I contact you outside of YouTube for more information. Okay, perfect. Yes. Jermaine Allen. So you can definitely connect with me on through the website, asanee44.com. You can reach me there. You can DM me on Instagram, or you can also email me support@asanee44.com. So you can, and when I say website, you can't, like on the website, there are ways for you to directly contact me. But all of my social media are there. So check the website out on the homepage, like wherever I show up in social media, you can click there. That's the safest way so that you know that it is actually me, and go from there. But you can definitely email me or DM me if you want to just go directly to it. So now let's get back into it from an IFA based perspective. What does this look like? So at the core of the tradition is character development. Iwa Pele, good, gentle character, balanced character, whatever you want to call it, right? It's the notion that we should be working in alignment with our Ori, and that's going to look like modifying our behavior, developing ourselves in ways that help us to fulfill our destiny or our divine purpose. That's the core of every single solitary thing that we do. Baseline, right? Foundational, right? Shadow work in this particular context is the process of identifying that unbalanced behavior and transforming it rather into gentle character, balanced character, what we call Iwa Pele. All right. It's no amount of ritual work that you can do that is going to save you when your character is not aligned, when your character is fundamentally broken and you're not trying to do anything to change that. Because you can do all the ritual work, and yes, it will work. But if your character is flawed, if you are not trying to walk in Iwa Pele, if you're violating your taboos, warnings, and things like that, you're living out of alignment with what your Ori accepts, it's going to falter because Ori is not going to accept those things on your behalf. Or if Ori has already accepted it in a space where you're doing what you're supposed to do, and then you decide that, later on you're just going to change up, you're going to go back to the way you already were, then Ori will remove those things from you, right? So the goal is to develop yourself, and that's ultimately what shadow work is, right? So the notion of shadow work and character development basically go hand in hand, and these are prerequisites for your spiritual blessings, for them to stick. Okay, that doesn't mean that you won't be blessed at all. It doesn't mean that the ritual work doesn't work or that you have to be perfect. So this is, don't confuse this with the notion that you have to get yourself together before you come to Ifa. The whole tradition is about helping you to get yourself together. The difference herein is that when you're working to get yourself together, when you're doing the ritual work, you should simultaneously be working to get yourself together. It goes hand in hand. The ritual work is for that. It's to help you to achieve that balance where you weren't able to achieve it before, but you utilize that to remain in balance. It's not like you know Ifa is not to be used to just come and get whatever you want and then you live any kind of way that you desire to live. That's not the point of the tradition. Unfortunately, a lot of people kind of think that it's all about just magic. You come to Ifa and you get whatever you want and you can live whatever kind of way that you desire to live, and that is not true. If you're doing things that are not aligned with your Ori, you are going to face challenges in life. That's just the real. Character development involves alignment work, specifically connected with Ori and your ancestors. Because as I said before, your ancestors play a role in this as well. Ori is central, but you also have an ancestral Ori, right? That's the space that you came from. So you're infinitely connected to your bloodline and your heritage and what they do prior to you ever even coming into this earth. impact your life here on this earth, and obviously what they do while you're here, and particularly to you, also impact your life on this earth. Okay. So, where do you begin when it comes to shadow work in the Ifa tradition? Where should you begin? Somebody asked this question. So, in Ifa, shadow work begins with understanding first and foremost your shadow, understanding places where you are deficient, right? This ultimately comes through the notion of getting IFA readings. It can present you information about where you are misaligned. So it won't necessarily be the entire reading. It depends on the person's situation as far as what comes out. But there are certain aspects of the reading that you are going to look at to see where you are and where you aren't aligned. And it's not going to be straightforward to say, yeah, this is your shadow, right? There will definitely be things that say this is what you need to work on, and you're going to, when you're looking at it from the perspective of shadow work, this is where you're going to understand, like, these are aspects of myself that I've buried, that I'm not looking at, that I'm ignoring, that I absolutely need to work on in order to come back in alignment. And it could be, I'm going to say simple from the perspective of straightforward, not necessarily simple for you to do because everybody is different. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh, well, you're just dealing with anger. Just get over it. Be a nice person, right? Or, calm down or be patient or what have you. Because obviously it's not easy for that person when they're dealing with that particular challenge. But it is, what I mean by this is it could be something that's like straightforward. It's not always this whole complicated. Most of the time it's not something complicated for you to understand. A lot of times you already know that you're actually dealing with it. You just need somebody to diagnose that for you and tell you in straight up terms, you need to stop this behavior so that your life can get on the right path. Sometimes that's all it takes. Right. It's just for that thing to be identified external to you. So it just basically is confirming what your Ori has already been telling you all along. All right. So once the source is identified, the shadow work proceeds through IFA-based recommendations and remedies. And we're going to talk about some of those in a little bit as well. All right. Correction, right? Getting out of the shadow, getting rid of that shadow material occurs through the application of guidance that you receive, including your behavioral changes, ritual work, and adherence to your taboos. And I will say this, yes, it's important for you to get to a space of self-acceptance where you are right now, right? None of us will ever achieve perfection, but you're always supposed to be working on your character according to the tradition. So this is not language related to, identify your shadow and just integrate it and just, accept it and live with it and be okay with this aspect of yourself being out of alignment, because it's not good on either side, whether you're dealing with the dark shadow or the golden shadow. Obviously, the dark shadow is going to cause you a lot of issues when it comes to relationships. But even so, not dealing with your golden shadow can cause you issues with you not fulfilling your destiny, not being fulfilled in life, not feeling good about yourself. Right? So if you know, for instance, that, let's say you were meant to be a famous person, right? You were meant to be a very, very notable person, but you're shy. Like, you can't speak in public. And maybe that was triggered at some point during your childhood when you were standing up to give a speech or something, and somebody embarrassed you. The teacher said something, or one of your fellow classmates said something and embarrassed you in that moment. And then ever since that moment, you've always been shy and scared to get up and speak in public, right? But you were meant to be famous. You were meant to influence a whole lot of people worldwide, but you're stuck in that energy. That is not something good. So Ifa is not saying, oh, just accept the fact that you're shy and that you don't want to get up and speak in public, especially if that's part of your divine purpose. No, your goal is to overcome that. And obviously, IFA offers remedies to help you to do so, but you got to be willing to implement those remedies in order to get to that space. All right. Somebody else asked about how to stay, how does IFA teachings help with staying grounded in addressing ego related challenges, right? So, character development. Character development is your primary method for correcting your ego driven behavior, as we talked about before. And it is going to help you to get to that next level. That's what IFA teaches about staying grounded. The Odu is a tremendous help when it comes to dealing with ego related challenges. So either through Ifa divination, where you're getting a reading and you're getting direct insight that points to you personally, or you're doing self study of the Odu and you're reading about different aspects where the Odu is saying, this is not something that is going to lead to a beneficial outcome in general, right? And so you can do some self reflection through there. I do that all the time because I write the Odus every week. Sometimes I'm writing something, I'm like, oh my God, this really hit home, right? And I know it's something that I'll need to work on, even so outside of a reading, because it resonated with me so deeply emotionally in that moment as I'm writing it. I'm like, okay, I know, or you are talking to me today. And so I use those as parameters as well. But obviously, when I get a reading, it's pointing directly to something that I'm dealing with in that moment, and I just gotta get to it and deal with it. So you are asking can you elaborate on the golden shadow? So yeah, we did talk about this earlier. That golden shadow is actually things that we consider to be positive, but they have been suppressed inside of us. So maybe somebody who is very, very creative, right? And they're doing, let's say an artist, they love to do paintings and things like that, but maybe their dreams or their ideals were squashed upon. Maybe they were doing a lot of beautiful artwork as a child, and their parents come and like, what are you doing? Stop wasting your time on this. Or that's horrible. That doesn't even look good, and so forth and so on. And so it causes that person to have blockages within themselves instead of allowing that beautiful artwork to even meet the world at some point. They suppress that ability because they were told that it was not something good, meaningful, or beneficial, right? And you see that a lot, especially in African cultures where children are taught, and I'm gonna say Nigeria specifically, but you see it in African cultures holistically, where children are taught to go and get jobs in fields that make lots of money, right? Doctors, engineers, lawyers, etc., etc. But if somebody is more artistic or creative, those skills aren't looked at in the same way. They do not hold as much value in the same way. So the parents may say, what are you doing this for? Why are you wasting your time with this? You need to, be studying to be a doctor, to, go out there and make a whole lot of money and get this career that's very, very prestigious or what have you. And that person suppresses that inner part of them. Matter of fact, this reminds me of, like I was talking to you guys before about girlfriends. On there, if you watch that show, like that's actually what happened to Joan. She had become this lawyer, but then she realized at some point in her journey that that wasn't really her dream. It was even an episode, I think Lynn was supposed to have taken like her application to like the was it culinary school, yeah, and or design or something like that, because she ended up opening a restaurant. But she did not take the resume, take the application to and mail it off. Lynn did not do so. And so Joan just assumed that she never got in. And so she went on to become a lawyer or what have you, but she realized later on that wasn't really her true dream. That's not what she herself wanted. And so she, ended up going into it and, doing her thing, which was beautiful in the end. But it was like there was a beautiful showcase in like understanding the shadow and allowing it to blossom and come to the surface, right? I'm going to take a few more questions and comments, and then we're going to get to this question, get back to what we were talking about, get to this question, dream interpretation. So you're asking Asaju, do you believe one can repel his or her Ori through antisocial behavior? What do you mean by repel their Ori? Are you saying push their own Ori away from antisocial behavior? I don't understand the question. So if you can contextualize that for me, please, and I would be happy to answer you. Okay, so you're saying, how do I start prayers in the morning like Ori or Lodomari? Issue as a devotee. Need to get deep on this, going to find your community here in the UK. So it really depends on you. Typically, you're advised to, start with your Ori or Lodomari, but it's up to you. Like, there's no real hierarchy as long as hierarchy is in terms of who you worship, right? Yeah, Ori is your personal divinity, so I'm not saying it that way, but it's not like your Ori is going to be upset because you woke up and you thanked Eshu first, right? It may just been something that was going on where you woke up from a dream and Eshu was doing something to help you in that dream, and you was like, okay, I know Eshu is has my back, and you woke up and you said thank you to Eshu. But typically people are told to wake up, touch their Ori, say some prayers to their Ori, and of course Olodumare, your Ori is ultimately the divine expression or essence of Olodumare that's within you personally. Okay. Let me see. Trying to get back to my banners. All righty, Faye, you're saying got it. That makes so much sense. Thank you. You're very welcome. All right, you saying, oh my goodness, my oldest son does great artwork, but I'm opposite. I've been pushing him with his artwork, even hosted shows for him since he's 9, but he says this is the reason he doesn't want to do it anymore. Maybe you were pushing him too much when he wasn't really ready. Or it also could be that that gift may not be meant to be public facing, or he doesn't want it to be. Or it could be, right? So you definitely want to check. It can be, and that's a good example too, because it can be imbalance on both ends of the spectrum. Maybe a parent sees the talent in the child, or even so they may know that their child is really gifted. They may have gotten a destiny reading from the child's birth, and they know that their child is supposed to go down a certain path. And so the parent wants that desperately for the child, and they push them too much before the child is ready, right? So there still has to be balance on either end, where the parent wants that, because even so in Nigeria it's getting to a space where people don't like to do too many destiny readings for children a lot, because if it comes out like a child is meant to be famous or great or something like that, a lot of times the parents will only pay attention to that child, or they will push that child, or in some cases they will just allow their child to be lazy and to lay around because they feel like that's their golden child, so to speak, and so they treat them like a prince or a princess, and the child actually becomes lazy because they don't have balance in their child's experience. They don't give them balance. He said he says he also doesn't want money for his work. So it could just be a natural gift within him, that it could actually be something that's healing within him, that he is not necessarily meant to be public facing, and you may be pushing him down that path when he's not really ready for it. Yeah. He said he was really shy, maybe. So he might need to do some work in that area. It just depends on the particular circumstance. So now let's get back to, a question you guys asked beforehand. How does dream interpretation relate to shadow work in Ifa? So our dreams, these are messages from our spiritual team, and it can come from any one of your spiritual member of your spiritual team showing up to tell you what's going on, what they're doing, what they're taking care of, what you need to be doing. So many different aspects. So obviously your dream can point to areas where you need to work on things that you do need to work on. And your ancestors, your Egbe room can show up in your dreams and say, you really need to deal with this particular aspect of yourself in order to go to the next level. So, dreams are harbingers of information from the spiritual realm. So pay very, very close attention to them, guys, please, because they can tell you a whole lot of information. Now, shadow work and Ori alignment, right? So these things, as I said before, go hand in hand. That's ultimately what we're doing. We're getting into alignment with Ori when we're doing shadow work. So, how does Ifa understand shadow work or internal conflict through that concept, through the concept of Ori or Ori alignment? So, herein, Ori represents the governing consciousness that guides our destiny, discernment, our decision making abilities, etc., right? Anytime you're dealing with unresolved internal conflict or tension, this is going to reflect back on you as a form of resistance, similar to what you were saying earlier about, your son not wanting to kind of pursue his gifts at this stage because he's resisting because he may have been pushed before he was ready. Neglect even, right? So some people are just immensely talented and they will not even follow through on their talent. I was watching a video yesterday. It's like Prison Story 101 or something like that. The channel, I would love to give a shout out to the channel properly, but I can't really fully remember. It was actually something my husband was watching, and I just sat down and watched it. And this guy was talking about how he was incarcerated in the Angola prison. It's actually in Louisiana, but it's Angola because we both started watching because we thought we were talking about Angola in Africa, and it was named after that, but it's actually a prison there in Louisiana. His name is E Solid, right? In case somebody wants to look it up. And so he was talking about like how much untapped talent and skills and wisdom and intellect there is in the prison system. Like he was talking about how they do all of these things and they are so ingenuous, right? And they can get things done when they want to get it done. And unfortunately, they use those skills most often for nefarious purposes, but they are so wise, but they're just not using their wisdom in a space that helps them to align with their destiny. Of course, he didn't say it that way. I don't think I don't know, but that's basically what he was portraying. That's what he was relaying in that message is that they're not using it for their benefit. Instead, they are using it for the detriment of themselves and society at large. And only they would take those skills and talents for something beneficial. And this is what happens when a person is not aligned with their Ori. Oftentimes, they, neglect or they just continuously misunderstand their path, their destiny, etc., etc. Greetings, and welcome all who are coming. Peace and love to you. Yep, it is. There's so much underutilized talents on the streets as a whole, not even in the prison systems. A lot of people out there on the street corner. And, you think about the ingenuity that they have, the ability to make large sums of money, to even so run an entire enterprise on the street instead of using that knowledge, that wisdom, and intellect for something, truly enterprising that's going to benefit themselves and their community and society at large. But that's another conversation. So another question is, what does Ori alignment look like in everyday life? Regularly avoiding making decisions by, staying in Ori misalignment. Sorry, let me go back to the question. So the question is, what does Ori misalignment look like in everyday life? So I'm going to go through a few things that can show up as Ori misalignment. By no means is this list all inclusive. There's so many different ways that it can show up I actually just kind of am hitting on those higher tier, broad level ways that Ori misalignment can show up. So, like regularly avoiding making decisions, that's just staying in contemplation too long, right? Some people love to do that. I'm praying about it, I'm thinking about it, I'm a journal, I'm a reflect, but not really coming down and doing the work in the physical realm. Even so, the opposite of that, it may be rushing into decisions because you have a fear you're going to miss out on something. You have a fear that, it's not going to work out if you don't act on it right away. Okay. Even so, feeling into deeply intuitive, deeply insightful, you just know that you have certain things within you, yet you consistently fail to apply that wisdom and that insight. Like you're told, go and do this or don't go and do that. And you don't listen to that inner voice and you do the complete opposite of what it is telling you to do. And when you do that, you immediately see that you messed up. That, oh man, I shouldn't have did it. I was told not to do it, and I still went down that path. And this is irrespective of even like divination or something like that. This is like you doing something and that you just know, like you get this intuitive nudging and knowledge that you should or should not be doing something, and you just don't follow that guidance, right? Feeling disconnected from your intuition just altogether. That will be the opposite of that. Some people feel like they just don't know when Ori is talking to them. They don't know how to follow Ori's guidance, even when they do hear it, things like that. And they rely too much on other people's opinions. Or what do you think I should do? Or, is this the right way? Is this good? Is this okay? So forth and so on. Even so, relying too much on divination, even for divination, other forms of divination, are absolutely great tools to help us to get that divine insight and a deeper level of knowledge and understanding. But this is not a tool that you should rely on all the time. You should be able to make regular day to day life decisions without having to always go to divination, right? Whether it's E4 or even, some people I know they have to pull a tarot card on everything that they do. Or they gotta pull out a pendulum. Should I do this? Yes or no? And they let the pendulum decide for them. That's an over reliance on external devices and not using your own intuition and your own Ori to guide you. We all need help in that area sometimes. And there are high level structures for that within the tradition, but this is not something that you should be wholeheartedly dependent on, or even external validation, somebody else saying that it's okay for you to do something or not okay for you to do something. Escaping discomfort through fantasy, idealisms, distraction, spiritual bypassing. This is happening a lot in today's world. A lot of people are avoiding making decisions in their life or doing things that they know they should be doing in their life by staying distracted. Social media contributes to this drastically, right? And it is worsened through that because it encourages this notion of doom scrolling. So, excuse me. So while you're doom strolling, you're not focused and paying attention to the things that you should be navigating in your life. You're doom scrolling, you're not meditating. You're doom scrolling, you're not journaling, you're not reflecting, etc., etc. Or just overall, people staying in fantasy land, thinking about the way things, the way they desire things to be, thinking about the way things should be, not really living in reality, right? Just day to day, like they see things in a completely different way, or they just have these high ideals that don't exist. And that spiritual bypassing, right? This love and light, right? Instead of dealing with the actual issue that they or somebody else is going through. It's just, love and light, wish you peace, love and light. Yeah, it's great to wish people well, but that is not going to control or misalignment when you just say, wish somebody love and light. That it doesn't work that way, right? Um, let's see. The opposite of that is avoiding disappointment by suppressing your desires entirely and refusing to plan, to hope, to envision, to to see outcomes that you prefer to happen through your own effort. So you get into a space where you just decide that you're not going to do anything because you don't want to hope, you don't want to get excited, etc. Got a comment over here. You said it can be challenging when you are an overthinker, learning to trust Ori at this moment of guidance. Absolutely. I agree with you 1,000%, right? And that's probably a lot of that Eleko energy because Eleko is very analytical and will have you thinking and, going through all kinds of different scenarios in your brain all day long. So I get it 1,000% because, yeah, it happens to me too. Thinking about every possible scenario or what have you. And it can be a challenge. And this is, again, why Ori alignment is so vital for you to work with Ori traditionally and then also in other ways if you choose to do so. But, like this is what a lot of the Evo is for. So, like, when you're doing Ibori, and I'm going to get into that deeper, it balances out those things, those dynamics. So this is Ori talking, right? This is what I should listen to at this particular stage. Another one is, taking on emotional responsibility for others while you're neglecting your own boundaries, your own needs. You're doing stuff for other people because you're avoiding yourself. You're avoiding dealing with those vital aspects of yourself that you really need to be working on. So you drown yourself in caring for others, and you call that compassion and, caretaking and stuff like that. On the opposite end of that is completely withdrawing emotionally from others, right? You're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to put up this wall. You may not even try. You put up a wall because you don't want to be accountable to other people in relationship dynamics because you're too afraid that they will hurt you, right? And that's usually because you've been emotionally wounded before by somebody or some people, even so, that have been very, very prominent or important in your life. You don't want to suffer that again. So you avoid it by just withdrawing and, I'm not going to love anybody. I'm not going to, be around anybody. I'm going to just, keep to myself, right? Stand in situations that are clearly draining while believing, like long suffering is a virtue. I'm gonna just stay here because I'm enduring. I'm yet holding on, right? Back in the day, just you holding on to something thinking that is going to get better just by you being there, and that's not what you're meant to do, right? There are times where we definitely need to stick by people when they're going through hardships, but not just stand in a situation that's detrimental to your own holistic well-being just because you believe in the notion of long suffering and things of that nature. Opposite of that is leaving situations at the first sign of discomfort, inconvenience, and disagreement. So that's when somebody's trying to avoid things, right? They're trying to avoid those connections because they don't want to be hurt because obviously they've been hurt in the past in some form or fashion. Faye, you're saying I'm a real reformed people pleaser under the guise of caretaker. Yes, that personality is so very common in today's society. And you got to figure it out. You got to say, hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to, navigate this situation? But, you're always taking care of other people, usually not getting anything back in return, even if you are you're pleasing everybody. That's not what anybody was designed to do. We were not put on this earth to please everybody. Yes, to have gentle character, but sometimes you have to have righteous indignation. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight for yourself. Some people's purpose, divine destiny, is actually related to them learning how to stand up for themselves, right? And so you're going to encounter a lot of situations in life that force you to confront that aspect of yourself. Okay. Let's see. You're asking about what about spiritual baths in Ifa using sage to cleanse items like dream catcher that I wear around my neck. Thank you again for being here. So I ask you questions I can't get yet. Okay, so as far as spiritual baths in Ifa, that's going to be done through a crochet or what we call spiritual medicine. So that's something that is specifically customized to you, and it is made in. Okay, so we're talking about the Isheshe tradition because I don't want to conflate the tradition. So I'm referring to Isheshe specifically out of Nigeria. Any type of spiritual bath that you get, or material spiritual soap or what have you get for a spiritual bath, will come from herbs and constituents that are native to West Africa. Not usually not sage, because I think sage is an American herb, and I could be wrong with it, wrong about that. But when I say not sage, it's not going to be sage, even if it may be included in the akosha or the spiritual medicine. It will not be like just going and saging your house. It's not part of the Ifa tradition. I'm not saying that it's wrong or it's bad to use sage, because I use sage myself. It's just not part of Ifa if that's what you're asking specifically, right? You can absolutely use it, and if it helps you out, I encourage it. Sage is it's beautiful. I love it. I love to use it. But it's just that's not spiritual medicine. That's not going to, like, just taking a sage bath, for instance. That is not part of the tradition, if you get me. Not as practiced in Nigeria or West Africa in general, right? It's going to, the spiritual bath is going to come with a lot more constituents most of the time, and it is going to be infused with spiritual remedies, sacred herbs, also we call it specific incantations or invoke different things. And again, it's customized because they're going to check and see what works for you. It's not like just going into a store and picking something up off the shelf, or even shopping online and just saying, I'm going to get this, without them doing some kind of checking to understand what works for you. Okay, so you said, are you familiar with open mouth herb? I am not familiar with that. Another one would be repeatedly waiting for external signs, confirmations, or rescues instead of making grounded choices. So some people just sit around waiting on somebody else to come and do the work for them. And that's not what it's about at all. Another one would be forcing outcomes through control or urgency while dismissing, guidance or reflection. You're just trying to force something to happen. You're trying to compel something to happen. That's an insecurity, right? When somebody is doing that because they want it to happen according to their time and their timeline and the way they want it to happen, when it could be completely misaligned with your destiny. And so you don't want to do that as well. Greetings, 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 all. Greetings. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Experiencing cycles of inspiration followed by apathy or overwhelm. So you get excited, but then you just drop back down and it's like, maybe you think it's not going to work, or you just don't feel the motivation or the energy to push through. A lot of times those scenarios happen when maybe somebody grew up in an environment where they got super excited about doing things, and then maybe their parents or their guardians or what have you didn't have the follow through. They would never allow them to reach their goals or achieve their goals. So and later in adult life, the person might get excited and then it just fall off or feel overwhelmed because they never had that foundation of somebody following through for them and helping them to achieve their goals. Or the opposite end of that will be remaining emotionally flat or disengaged to avoid their vulnerability, their hope, or their expectation, usually for the same reason. Because even when they got excited about something going up or what have you, nobody ever really helped them out. They never allowed them to get to that space to do anything about it. So, the example earlier where was somebody was saying that, they push their child to get into artwork. Well, some parents are the opposite. The child wants to get into artwork. They want to learn something. And the parent is not helping them to get into that space, the parents, right? And so they just always have that void in their spirit because they were never able to pursue the things that gave them pleasure or hope or expectancy, inspiration, things of that nature. Yes. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so another one would be identifying strongly with being intuitive, empathetic, or spiritually receptive while struggling with daily life in the physical realm. And this happens with, quite often with people who are very, very spiritual. They do all the spiritual work and, the rituals, the this and that, but they don't know how to live day to day life on earth. They don't work. They don't want to work, right? They just want to be spiritual and in their head. Going back, perfect example would be Lynn, right? On Girlfriends, right? Her character was exactly like that. She was like, this spiritual person is vegan. She believed in freedom. She believed in self-expression and all of these things, but she could never settle on something specifically in life. And she didn't work for the most part, right? Or she would always have like these little half jobs and was so dependent on her friends for her livelihood, etc. That happens a lot, when a person is dealing with shadow aspects of themselves. Okay. Opposite of that would be rejecting your intuition and receptibility altogether in favor of just being in survival mode. Like you don't even look to things from an intuitive perspective. You feel like you're just so practical and you're gonna get it done and you're gonna be on the ground, boots on the ground, doing everything that you need to do. And you're thinking that, there's nothing spiritual that can actually help you out. And that's not true either, because it's a holistic journey. Using forgiveness, understanding, or acceptance to bypass necessary confrontation or separation. So, just I forgive you, and the black community has a huge issue with this as a whole, right? Anytime somebody does something to us, we just say, "Oh, we forgive." A lot of that comes from Christianity, but it is still a part of an aspect of our shadow self because we were told, forgive your enemies, forgive those who abuse you, and so forth and so on. And you see that a lot of times when there's something that collectively happens with the black community, there's this stance of automatic forgiveness without any reciprocity. The person does nothing to warrant our forgiveness. It was just like, oh, we forgive you. Because a lot of times we're just holistically, we're used to having to, our ancestors at least, were used to confronting things and nothing being done about it. Or when they confront things that were done against them, a lot of times they were the ones who were harmed or injured or even killed in those circumstances. So that's what they learned. They just learned to forgive, to settle it within themselves because they couldn't confront it physically, right, without having to deal with some kind of trials or tribulations from that. And so that's what ended up happening. So it became this, I forgive. And people, even beyond just the slavery narrative, people are like that. They just choose to forgive because they feel like nothing will be done. And so they don't confront things, they don't stand up for themselves. And then the opposite of that will be being too, right, confrontational. It's like every little injustice that you that somebody does to you, you want to confront them, you want to face them. I've been like that. Like I was like that for most of my life. Like I'm about to stand up and do some things. I don't know if it was some ancestors in me, like, hey, we got tired, we've been through all of this kind of stuff. Somebody go stand up for this injustice. But yeah, that has been me for pretty much most of my life experience. Or even so remaining, like so detached, emotionally detached, because you can't handle dealing with the emotions from there, right? So all of those types of things can, indicate that you definitely need to do some shadow work. It can show up in those broad areas so much more, right? Like it's infinite. It's under so many things, infinite under the sun, the way that this can show up. Let's see. I got a comment here. You're saying, shall I start an altar connect with my benevolent ancestors for connection, Afro Jamaican, but born in the UK? You absolutely can. And I have an ancestors altar course on the website if you want to look at that. I also have a book, Connecting with Your Ancestors. It's available on Amazon that talks. It's more holistic as far as different aspects of ancestral veneration. But I would encourage you, if that's the way your spirit is leading you, because oftentimes we in the diaspora begin with, wow, I don't know what's going on with my throat. Oftentimes, we in the diaspora, we begin with ancestral altars because that's an easy way for us to navigate into the tradition without going full blown Ifa, doing icons and things like that. I really don't encourage people to just start working with Ifa icons unless they're absolutely ready for that reality. Alafia, alien black girl, long time. Thank you for joining. Thank you. So, let's see. You said, what's your author name? Dr. Asanee Brogan. That's okay, you're on Instagram. Trying to see where the name. It should be, yeah, it's on my Instagram profile. Like, my name is there in my bio. It's Dr. Asanee Brogan. Yes. So the video is absolutely saved on YouTube, not on Instagram. I don't post a full video there. So it is actually being recorded on on YouTube right now. So you can go back to the live from the beginning. It'll also be available on Spotify. It was supposed to be available on Facebook, but as soon as I started recording, it said Facebook wasn't recording for me. So even so, they take it off of Facebook after 30 days. And LinkedIn. I'm currently on LinkedIn. So it will be on those platforms thereafter. It's there now on all of those platforms that I just mentioned, the long form video, that is. And even on YouTube, it's like the vertical and the landscape, right? So we got it every way. All right, one more question. Excuse me. Can we have an Afro name before initiation? As we Afro Jamaicans still accept European name. Yeah, you're a Yoruba name, absolutely. So before initiation, you can do it through partial initiation or full initiation. So if you go through partial initiation, which means receiving your hand of Ifa, you will get an Ifa name there. Or obviously, when you go through full initiation, you get your Ifa name there as well. But I'm going to handle those types of questions in another session because I want to stay focused in on the topic at hand. So if you do have questions about things like that, feel free to DM me and we can get those things answered, okay? So can someone have a strong destiny but a weak character at the same time? Absolutely. So if destiny character, they're absolutely interrelated. They need to be they work together, right? So it is possible, because they're not the exact same thing. It is absolutely possible for someone to carry a very strong destiny, right? But they struggle with their character development, so they never truly fulfill their destiny. A strong destiny ultimately indicates your potential, your capacity, your purpose, what you're supposed to do, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to do it. And that's reality for any and everybody. All right. When your character is underdeveloped, your destiny will usually remain unrealized, and you will experience so many delays in life despite you having the opportunities along your path to accomplish something, because you're not properly aligned. Okay. That being said, your destiny will not disappear. It's not like just because you're not walking in that space that it just leaves. It's still your destiny. Once you decide to come in alignment with it, then you can, fulfill it, assuming it's not like later on to the point where you're about to transition. And even then you could come back and, finish it off. That's what you're gonna have to do, is come back and finish it off. few questions over here. Am I Oshun? No, Ogun. Ogun. Yeah, done a lot of work with Ogun, so that's probably why you don't see that energy direct. But Oshun is I'm really, really closely linked to Oshun. So you might see some of that coming out in my personality as well. Most people are surprised when I say Ogun, but that's because they didn't meet me back in the day. Can your character be attacked via blocks by others? Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna say yes, you can absolutely. So actually, that was a great example, right? So when you're saying character being attacked, so like for instance, as a child of Ogun, I'm not supposed to, get too upset or what have you, because me getting upset and angry with people can cause a whole lot of problem, right, for them and for me. And so somebody could absolutely try to attack me, send obstacles in my way to cause me to get really, really upset and angry, right? And that anger could get me out of my character alignment, right? In general, it's not good for anybody to just be angry regardless of what, Orisha that you're under. But if your head Orisha is like Orun, or um certain orishas where you can get upset easily, any type of warrior energy, right? And you get out of their character, it can cause you a whole lot of problems in your life. So for sure, for sure. You saying you see the Ogun energy. Yes, yes. Who Ogun comes out. He does. Ogun, give me go. He's your head too. Okay, beautiful. Yes, yes, I love Ogun. I absolutely love Ogun 100, 1000%. Right. But, I had to do a whole lot of balancing acts over here with that energy. You said people are very surprised when I say I'm a one Ogun too. Yes, definitely, because you don't present as Ogun just from the offset either. And I get it, the goal is to be in balance. So in balance, Ogun, you're not going to have that whole lot of aggressive energy and so forth and so on. You're going to have, more so on the diplomatic end. But yeah, I wasn't always on that end. Even now, I can easily get out of that end. It's the same shout out to fellow Omo Ogun. I shake 100. Balancing in peace and time for self to recollect and recover. It is important. It is hugely, hugely important. And even so, you think about narratives of Ogun, for instance, he did go back and retreat when he would do stuff and get so angry. He would go back and be by himself and come into a space where he wanted to help people, because Ogun is a very, very helpful energy, right? He loved to help people, but that anger, see, that's the challenge too. When Ogun gets anger, Ogun's anger is destructive. It's fire. It can set some stuff ablaze. Right? Whereas, you get other aspects of different orishas. It depends on the orisha that you're working with, that, it may not be as destructive when it comes to their particular energy. So that's why children of Ogun have to be very, very extra careful, especially if their disposition is more towards that aggressive or fiery aspect of Ogun. Whereas you can have some people who are like more so just who are more balanced diplomatic. My husband is actually Ogun. He's so much more diplomatic than me. But you can see his energy in his warrior stance. He loves anything to do with war and so forth and so on, right? And even somebody who has Ogun energy could be apathetic when it comes to fighting. Like, they don't want to fight anybody. Again, that's out of balance. They want to stand up for themselves. They want to stand up for their loved ones because they just feel so afraid. That's any Orisha. You could be on any end of the spectrum for sure. And it all has to do again with being in alignment with your destiny, alignment with your character, and so forth and so on. So yes, did you say now you said the goal is for no one to realize it? That's it. That's it. It's very blunt and raw. Yes, yes, yes. That's the energy of Ogun. Ogun just let's get to it. Right? No time to water things down. So yes, yes. You said, what will you say to someone who has been spiritually attacked? The said person has spent thousands on rituals and each time has been told that the rituals have worked and accepted, yet nothing happens. It depends on the situation. So, if are you going to the same person, right? So, if you're going to the same person and you keep having the same result, my suggestion there would be maybe to try someone else if what you're doing is not working for you. That would be my best advice. All right, shadow work and ancestral alignment. So, where do ancestral patterns and inherited experience, etc., enter this conversation about shadow work? Okay, you're saying it's through different people. That's a difficult one, right? Because I don't know what that looks like for you in your experience. If you're dealing with different people and you're still having the same result, which is not desirable, maybe DM me and we can have a little bit of a conversation about that. Okay, so Ifa teaches that you carry the character of your people, your lineage, right? So you don't come in here in the earth in isolation. You're gonna come in with a whole lot of energy behind you, with you, in you, etc. And those are going to be the ancestral forces, of course, also other spiritual forces, but your ancestors are vital, vital to you achieving your goals. Some people's ancestors are closer connected to them than other people's ancestors as far as some your Egungun can actually be like somebody's head or Risha, or somebody could just have a really close connection to Egungun, especially depending on their destiny or what have you. And Egungun could be very vital in you achieving your destiny in ways that it may not be as vital for other people, right? Even so, we all are dealing with those ancestral patterns, right? That can manifest as inherited dispositions, those relational dynamics, life obstacles or challenges that don't fully respond to our own efforts, no matter what you do, or even you might not even see or deal with it within yourself, but it is in your family line and you're not realizing that you aren't able to overcome those things because these are inherited ancestral patterns that need to be dealt with. All right. Usually they're going to show up in those repeating themes that surface across your lineage, across your family line. All right. Or they emerge without a defined personal origin to you. You don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know why I'm dealing with this because I have done nothing or it's not linked to anything specific in my life, right? You see this, I see it all the time, all day long, right? In so many different scenarios. My husband has a friend where it's like in that family, the mother, she just passed away actually, but she was divorced from her first husband and then she got married. Every single one of her children was divorced at least one time and they had been remarried. Some of them were even divorced from the remarriage. And that was definitely is not even was because the children, most of the children are still alive. It definitely an inherited generational pattern, but they don't practice Ifa or anything like that. They're actually Christian. So I never say anything. And I've told this before, but that just always sticks out to me in my mind because I see that pattern so clearly in that family line. And it's nonstop. Like every single person, they get married, they get a divorce. That happens so often. Divorces, people chronically not getting married, chronic singlehood in a family line. Like somebody might always come up to a space where they're about to get married and then it just falls through. We see the pattern, especially a lot of sexual abuse going through family line. Even so, rape. I mean, I remember a situation years ago when I worked in Georgia at a college, and one of my colleagues, she had been raped when she was she lived in New York. She had been raped in New York. She moved, came to Georgia because of her rape situation, and she started her life over, got married, so forth and so on. And then she had a daughter from that marriage. She ended up getting a divorce. Her husband left her, or what have you. Later on, as her daughter grew up, she became an adult. Her daughter literally got raped in Georgia, and then she moved to New York. And at that time, I was personally a Christian, but even so, I could see it because I understood generational patterns. Then I'm like, y'all don't see this? Like, this was an exact mirror. It's something that needs to be dealt with in that family line, but they weren't dealing with it. Instead, they were just moving because they were trying to get away from the physical environment and not really dealing with the emotional aspects of that particular situation. And I hope I don't get dinged for saying that word on YouTube because they can be funny about that. But that's the reality, and it's countless patterns that I see all day that just show up in family lines, and a lot of times people are dealing with things from generational situations, and they never really work out their life circumstance because of that. From a NEFA perspective, recognizing these ancestral influences help us identify why we experience certain things or we have certain emotions that don't really belong to us. Some people have explained having like just this sense of anger or this sense of sadness, and they don't know where it comes from. And sometimes they'll dig into their lineage and they'll see experiences, realize rather, a situation where one of their ancestors went through something where it left this stain of like chronic, emotional patterns or behavior on the family because it was never reconciled. And so somebody has to go back and do that work so that the family line can overcome that. Personal responsibility is still not absolved. It's just because it is an ancestor influence, though. So just because you know that I'm dealing with this because of my lineage or what have you, doesn't mean that it's okay to just stay in that space and not do the work and not get rid of those shadows and deal with that material that's coming through the bloodline. Instead, you're actually supposed to correct it, especially if you know, because if you know there's a strong likelihood that you are a generational healer that is meant to deal with that. And so you're going to have to do the work. Another question that I got from you guys before is, do the ancestors work within the shadows without the need for evil or for good care, or is good character sufficient on its own? So definitely in some situations, ancestral influences can be corrected through your own behavior, your own character, etc. Right? But this is generally not going to be the case for generational healers, as I mentioned before, and it's just not going to be the case for everybody, period. In some cases, it can happen. In other cases, it's not. All right. So not all of those patterns can be resolved just by you being good and just by you, like, I'm going to live, a life of purpose and, not do XYZ type of things that my ancestors did. That's great and that's beautiful for you. And you probably will experience a certain level of blessings in your life if you do move in that direction, because character development is such a prominent part of this work. But that is not all. Keep in mind that, deep-seated generational patterns often require ritual work. You got to go in and do the work, the abode, and even so, sometimes the crochet and other things, high level ceremonies, even so, initiation in some cases, right? Particularly when these issues persist despite your efforts to correct them. Another thing, too, when examining this, even if your own behavior works things out for you, so to speak, you got to understand it's just for you. If it's a generational pattern, that ancestral trauma is going to linger through generations. So it can still impact your family members. It can impact your own children, your progeny, or your children's children. So we don't want to just leave it there just saying, well, hey, I'm walking in good character, forget everybody else because my life is, good or what have you. No, you still want to get rid of it because it can impact generations from now. Even if it skips you, some things just naturally skip over people. It's not even with them doing ritual work, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't come back and get to their children or their children's children, etc. So be mindful of that. It's just best to go ahead and deal with it. Um, so how do we do this shadow work in the Ifa tradition? All right. So the first thing is we are going to identify the shadow self through Ifa divination. You can help us with this process, as I said before. It can reveal your taboos. It can reveal warnings that you need to follow. Those are critical to follow these things because it can absolutely help you to avert certain things, even when it comes to food, right? And I'll get to that in a while. But any type of behavioral modification, you need to really follow that. But sometimes behavior is going to come in a position of you, not getting angry, in a position of you not allowing people to take advantage of you or use you. Um, so many different things, so many different positions you can come in. Let's see. You said, do you have any ones on ones? Oh, one on ones. Sorry, one on ones. Yes, I do. I do offer Ori alignment coaching. It is available on the website. If that's what you mean by one on ones, or if you're talking about for consultation, for sure. I do spiritual coaching, a whole lot of things. Check out the website, asanee44.com. And you can DM me if you have something specific, and I can tell you, like the right pathway for you. Let's see. The taboos and the warnings. If you find yourself getting defensive, especially when certain things are brought up in your reading, whether it's your warnings, your taboos, or it could be something else within the body of the reading, as far as there's something that is pointed out, right? And it says about you, and you find yourself getting defensive about this, it is likely that your shadow was triggered. And this is what you need to do something about. Because sometimes people will get a reading and they're just like, but I don't do this, right? And I can tell immediately it's something that they need to deal with. And usually they'll come back maybe a couple of days, a week later, and like, what, I sat and I reflected on this scenario and I realized that this was me. And I didn't realize it was me. Usually that's going to happen after they do the elbow, because then Ori's going to bring back their memory and say, yes, you do this. And this is where it's showing up. And this is how it shows up in your life. And that's when they come back with their realization. It's like, oh my God, you know what? I don't know why I resisted me. Sometimes it's like just they forgot, right? A lot of things get buried in our psyche as we go through life. And the older we get, the more we forget. That's just a reality. Okay, so and Ifa Center ancestor reading can also help to address these family-based patterns that need your attention. So in Ifa, we can talk to the ancestors directly, doing a reading through that mechanism and getting to the heart of those aspects. Even so, the ancestors can come up in Ifa divination itself, just depending on what's going on with you in that life, in your life at that time. But if you want to specifically know about what's going on with your ancestral heritage or lineage, you can get an ancestor reading for that too. Ifa divination can also tell you, what state you're in. Are you in alignment, or you, is it E-Ray or is it EB? Are you aligned? Are you gonna, are blessings coming for you, or are you misaligned? The shadow aspects of you coming through, or what have you. And that can help you identify what you need to work on. And I'm going to say in that moment, it's important for us to not to overwhelm ourselves with trying to do too much at one time, because shadow work, it can be very, very expensive for some people, depending on what they are dealing with within themselves and then also within their bloodline. So keep that in mind. And that's why it's important to do Ifa divination on a regular basis, because when you do one reading, you can see, oh, these are the areas that I need alignment in. You could just work on those areas, because you was to get everything at one time, you will be overwhelmed. And so it's better to just get it time over time to see, okay, now let's work on this area. Let's get this right, right? It's a process. If you are misaligned, the reading can also identify whether it's through your behavior, ancestral influences, or even so malevolent spiritual interference. Either way, you don't ever want to be out of you don't want to be out of alignment. I don't want to say ever. You don't. But the reality is that we're all going to be out of alignment at some level with certain things in our lives. You're never going to be perfectly 100% aligned, right? So, what remedies, what Ifa remedies are most beneficial in shadow work? As I said before, Ibori, that's the head cleansing within the Ifa tradition. We're going to feed Ori with what Ori wants at that time, right? You can do just the acceptable Ori offerings if you desire to, but my recommendation is, especially if you're doing Ibori, you want to give Ori what Ori wants. And it could be what you was planning to give, it could be something else. So you want to check and see what your Ori wants. What happens with that is you're going to get some balance going on. You'll start to restore your alignment with your higher self, with, the aspect of your inner head and your higher self are aligned, and you are able to make better decisions. You're better able to negotiate and understand even so what's going on in your life. When you work with Ori, you're gonna get intuitive nudges. You're gonna just know, or he's gonna show you, like, you need to deal with these types of things, etc., etc., etc. And you'll begin to work through those dynamics, and your Ori will show you what you need to do to get the work done. Ancestor connection rituals are also important for you to connect yourself with your lineage so that you can communicate with them better on a one-on-one, and you can hear from them better, similar to with Ivorian. Ancestor elevation rituals are also very, very vital, because herein we're restoring those ancestors who are not in the astral realm, in the ancestral realm, I should say, as they should be, right? They may be in a lower level of the astral realm. And so we want to get them back in the rightful space so that they can work and they can help us out in the way that we need to be helped out. Okay. It reduces, that tension between our bloodlines, so that everybody is good and everybody's working together in harmony, the ancestors, and us, so that we can fulfill our own purpose and destiny, and we can help our bloodline do the same. Ebo, or to other orishas, is also important, right? So it's not that you should neglect those, because everything that you do, any type of ritual work, it is ultimately to align you with your Ori. So you're also going to need to feed other aspects or other orishas in specific instances to deal with the particular attributes that they govern, right? So like we talked about Ogun with, anger, it could be like you need some help in the area, you need to cool down, right? Impulsivity, making quick decisions could be issue, you got to slow down. Impatience, you might need to feed Obatala to get some temperance going within you. You're avoiding things, could be yummy. So many different aspects. These are just so small few examples of what could be going on in your situation and who you need to feed, etc. These particular energies, the orishas, they help to correct excesses or deficiencies and remove those obstacles out of our path so that we can move forward, because there might be something blocking us in that particular area that they deal with. So we need their help to manage. As I said before, maintaining those taboos or warnings that come up in your reading. If you're told not to engage in certain behaviors, you need to try not to engage in those behaviors. Warnings, the same thing, right? These serve are guardrails to help us to come into alignment, and it shows us, where our shadow is and what we need to avoid to get rid of that material so that we can move forward and advance in a better way. They also force you to confront, every single day what you're dealing with. If you have, like, for instance, a taboo, like you shouldn't be getting angry. Yeah, so you got to deal with that every single solitary day to get yourself in alignment with what you need to do. Do study and integration, right? So I said that before. Like, if you get an IFA reading, you're going to get an do. Sit with that do for some time. Whenever I get a reading, I read that do for the first week so I can get it into me. So I know I go back and read that reading so that I know what is going on and I can keep it fresh in my memory. After that, I try to come back to it at least once a week until I get another reading so I can remind myself of what to do. I study certain aspects of it that I know I need to work on, within myself. And so I encourage other people basically to do the same, right? So you can do that. You can also read the Odu itself from an educational and inspirational perspective outside of getting an IFA reading. Because as I said before, you start reading through that, it can bring up some stuff where you like, I know I need to deal with. Like Ori will hit and say, hey, you know, this is something you need to pay attention to, and you just know automatically you need to deal with. Keep in mind though, when I say self-study, that's what it is. It's not like you when you go to read the Odu that this is something that came up in a reading for you and you want to go out and do any type of ritual work or anything that it says in there, or you want to apply any type of taboos or information from that Odu to you specifically, because that's not how it works. You use it as a source of education and inspiration as you read through it to understand, like what specific aspects does the Odu talk about and how that applies to your life. Okay, let's see. Now, IFA remedies and modern support. So, how does like the modern support that we look at from a psychological perspective and otherwise integrate with the IFA remedies that we just talked about and more? Another thing too, IFA remedies, I didn't want to get too deep in this area, but another remedy also would be initiation, right? Some people do need to be initiated in order for them to really work out the chasm between where they want to be, where they know they should be, and them getting to there, because they are having some fundamental issues with that. But I don't want to get too heavy with that in this particular discussion, because right now we're just at the area of identifying and working through it at the baseline level. All right. So, how can modern day shadow work techniques support Ori alignment without replacing these traditional protocols? So, you can work with both. It's prudent to do so if you feel like they're going to help you. So, modern approaches often include things like coaching and therapy and counseling and structured self-development programs. So these particular approaches can help you examine your behavioral patterns and your decision-making habits in a very structured way where you can get the proper support to guide you in doing it in a way that is going to be healthy for you, right? So these aspects are going to help you connect to the broader energetic picture, right? That's specific to your life patterns or events or situations. Other techniques also include like meditation, mindfulness, breath work, nervous system regulation in different forms, or what have you. These particular practices can help you recognize your internal reactions and resistance early on before they become habitual behaviors. Okay. Many people use journaling, reflection, pattern tracking, self-observation practices, etc., etc., etc. Right. So these particular tools can help you with making making repetition visual and showing you where your intentions and behaviors are not aligned, where they're not matching up. There are also relational tools such as boundary setting practices, communication skills training, conflict resolution or navigation frameworks, etc., that are used. These can help you to correct your behavior in real life relationships where misalignment often shows up in your journey. All right. So when it comes to those practices like the meditation, the mindfulness, breath work, journaling, etc., they support awareness and behavioral modification. If her remedies come in when you have the abode, the akoshe, the taboos, the orisha connections, etc., initiation, even so, they provide that energetic realignment that you need to push through those dynamics because usually those dynamics are not going to work on their own. A lot of times people start with working with these and they fall off real quickly. They get excited, especially like around this type of time, the new year. A lot of people set 2026. I back that up. Around, like the beginning of the Gregorian year. That's the proper way to say it. All right. So, because it's technically not the new year, that's why I make that correction. So, not in America at least. The new year begins around the spring solstice in the March, somewhere in there. But going back to what I was saying, around the beginning of the Gregorian year, people oftentimes love to make resolutions like, I'm going to go hard at this, I'm going to fix this behavior, or what have you. And then after a couple of weeks, a couple of months, they fall off and they've lost track. And here you go at the end of another year, and the next year around, you're setting the same resolution. Why? Because you're not dealing with the spiritual or the energetic aspects of what you're dealing with. So this is what all of the tools in IFA are designed to do, is to correct the energetic imbalances. Because if you don't have that energetic balance, you're usually going to abandon your goals and your practices. You get tired, right? You get distracted easily. That happens all the time. Anytime you're trying to really do something to help improve yourself, you easily get distracted and fall off and you forget, etc. You might start to lose motivation, or there may be even spiritual interference that comes in to kind of force you off of your track. So IFA protocols are going to help come in and to stabilize your energy, to give you the resolve to keep pushing forward. Even so, it will help you to know, what do I need to do for me, for this to work for me, right? Because meditation doesn't work for everybody. Breath work doesn't work for everybody. And you might find yourself down that path of, this yo-yo, because you're trying to do things that aren't truly aligned with your Ori. And when you do the ritual work, Ori is going to then show you, this is the path that you need to take that is best suited for you. Okay. So I'm going to get into some Odu wisdom, and then we're going to talk about some Orishas before we close up. So the Odu I wanted to speak on here is Ofun Odu, which speaks on the conditions where you have that awareness, but correction has been delayed or avoidance. You know what to do otherwise, but you're not doing it, right? So it speaks heavily to this notion of a person having the tools, the knowledge, the intellect, the wherewithal, but they're not putting in the action to get things done. It's not about you being ignorant at this point, like you don't know. It's about you just not doing what you know that you should be doing. Okay. So it warns, this particular Odu warns against, excessive contemplation, as we talked about before, just thinking about it. Well, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to think about it. You do everything. You sit, you write, your journal, you do everything but the work. And this Odu is speaking to, at some level, you got to hold yourself accountable for what you are or are not doing to get things done properly, right? It reveals how your intelligence, your spirituality, self-knowledge can be used even so to justify you delaying, because you have all of this, wherewithal in your head and in your mind, but you're not putting it into action. So it basically is saying you need to get out of that space of analysis paralysis and move forward and do the work. So if you want to do some deeper level research on that, please feel free to do so. Orisha wisdom. So where do the Orishas come in? So some of the most prominent Orishas in this obviously is going to be Ori, because this is Ori alignment. obviously Egungun, because we've already talked about them as far as the ancestral linkage, and also Igbe Orun, very, very vital in this functionality. I don't want to get too deep into them because it would have been much longer than what it already is, especially as I start talking about Igbe Orun. Yes, he's going to get long. So when it comes to Ori, just kind of reiterating what we've already talked about, that's your link to your destiny, to discernment, to alignment, or what have you. Your Ori, your inner head, is going to reveal to you areas in your life that need to be examined so that you can align with what you need, align with Ori, and deal with aspects of your shadow self so that you can be whole. Alignment is is restored whenever your decisions and your behavior coincide with the guidance that you're receiving from Ori. When you're doing all this work, as I said before, Ori is going to start showing up when you do it, Ori, you just start hearing from Ori like left and right. You'll see Ori in your other spiritual team just working in your life. And you're like, wow, it's just coming through so heavily. But you gotta pay attention and you gotta implement those things that are coming through. You can't just say, oh wow, it's coming through. You need to do something with it, right? Egungun, as I said before, that's your ancestral lineage, your heritage, the continuity of your bloodline. Those ancestral patterns or behavior, you need to pay attention to them as well. You are responsible for working through those things, even though they may come through your lineage, it may not have anything to do with you. You still need to work through them if you want wholeness in your own experience. Honoring Egungun is going to raise that awareness, right, of adverse familiar patterns, behaviors, and provide you with that insight on what you need to do to correct those things. As I said before, Egbe Orun are also important. This is your heavenly society, your heavenly peers, all right? These are your companions. They influence relational dynamics to a heavy degree. So social belonging, recognition, alignment with your society here on earth, your peer group here on earth. Whenever you're misaligned with your Igbe or room, this often manifests as issues in relationships, struggles, social instability, reputational issues, difficulty maintaining healthy bonds, etc., etc. And all those things are important when it comes to shadow work because that aspect of your shadow is dealing with, like behaviors that you've suppressed and repressed. And all of that boils down to how we relate to other people in the world, right? So, many shadow work things often are going to surface through that, as I said before, abandonment issues, shame, embarrassment, right? Egbe Orun is heavy in these particular areas. Rejection, people pleasing, as you brought up earlier, isolation, things of that nature. And so you want to work with your Igbe Orun as well. So you want to make sure that you're aligning with that group of spirits as well for you to have those healthier bonds and those social relationship dynamics, etc. Right? Give you that sense of belonging, acceptance, and love that you need so that you can work through those particular issues. Alrighty, so an arumula, right? Let us not forget arumula. This is oftentimes used interchangeably with Ifa. So when somebody says Ifa, they're referring to arumula if it's said in the context of an orisha, because sometimes people get that confused. So when it comes to Arumula, Arumula is the witness of destiny, the source of insight. So that's why we go when we get E for divination, because Arumula is going to reveal our destiny to us little by little through that process. And obviously the full-on destiny is revealed through full Ifa initiation, where you get your Odu that you were birthed with. But every reading thereafter, you're still getting different aspects of what's going on with your destiny position at that particular moment, right? And herein, you're going to know where you deviated from it and, like what type of shadow material is going on and what you need to work through when it comes to Ifa divination. So All of those orishas, all orishas are important in this dynamic. Don't misunderstand me, but these are some of the ones that you definitely want to pay attention to. Now, I was asked this question beforehand. I was not going to talk about Iyami and Eshu specifically, though they are important. It's just I have limited capacity, so I always try to stick to like a few orishas, usually around four, whenever I present a topic. But we are going to talk about Eshu and Iyami briefly. So Eshu reveals, aspects of our shadow by exposing those contradictions, right? So Eshu is going to show up with the trickery, right, and give you places where you are, give you situations rather where you have adverse consequences to your actions, especially when it comes to communication dynamics and things of that nature. Again, that relational aspect of us may come up with delays or certain obstacles or repeated tests or what have you to show you that you are not in alignment, that you need to deal with certain aspects of your shadow. Eshu brings their hidden behavior to the open, right? So, Eshu is going to force you to confront things, even when you don't want to. Eshu is going to put in your face and it's just like, here you go. You got to deal with it, right? Even if you try to avoid it, it's going to come back again and again and again until you confront it. In shadow work, Eshu is going to function as an enforcer as well, force you to be accountable to your actions, ensuring that your choices produce beneficial outcomes. That's the goal. It's up to you. If you don't align with Eshu and you're not doing what you're being shown to do, obviously you can stay out of alignment and you can stay in that space of your shadow. But that's the ultimate goal. Okay. Iyami is going to expose that deeper aspect. Iyami is the womb. So, it's going to help expose those hidden aspects, especially related to like mother energy. I forgot to put that. Power dynamics, control, emotional reactions, family attachments. But again, especially when it comes to the mothers, abandonment issues, things like that. Iyami oftentimes surfaces when we have issues related to familiar type of conflict, okay? Some that reverses or changes all of a sudden. Things are going well and then all of a sudden, boom, it just changes. That could be Iyami at play. Could be, right? I'm not making any type of diagnosis here. Or any type of destabilization when you ignore places where you need to be balanced. Iyami also reveals where you're resisting correction, you're mishandling your power, or you're avoiding necessary transformation. So I am going to close up shortly because I am at the hour. So I'm going to walk through. I'm actually not going to take any more questions, but I'm going to just close up, walking the path of Ifa. Herein, when you're walking the path of Ifa, you're trying to overcome those shadows. This requires you going beyond that space of awareness and getting into action, doing something about it. The ritual work, yes, but also behavioral modification. Okay. Um, responsibility increases as your knowledge increases with this thing. So the more you know, the more you're expected to do. It's not just going in, I'm going to get an IFA reading just to know what's going on. And you don't put in the work, the ritual work, and also the physical work, the behavioral efforts that you need to put in to get to that space of alignment. There's no need to know if you're not going to do anything about it anyway. So, yes. So, guys, as always, if you're seeking deeper level support, you want to know more about aligning with your Ori, you want to know more about Ifa divination or any of those dynamics, we have so much information available on the website, asanee44.com. And I'm going to close with the next one. The next live stream is supposed to be on, is that right? The 19th. I don't know if that's the right date. No, it's supposed to be the 26th. Sorry, I have the wrong date. So it's supposed to be January the 26th. And we're going to talk about the role of a Babalawo and a godparent because I consistently get questions about what should your Babalawo or your godparent be doing for you. And they are listed separately. So Babalawo is somebody that is, taking care of your spiritual needs. They're not your godparent at this stage. Your godparent is somebody who actually initiates you. And so that's the difference there. We're going to talk about those things the next time. Thank you all for showing up. You said this has been beneficial. Thank you. You're very, very welcome, fan. Thank you for this topic. I had a really great time doing some research and just meditating through a lot of it, actually. So I really, really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. So I appreciate you all for showing up. Visit us on asanee44.com. As always, guys, Ashe, please have a very blessed and beautiful day and beyond. And you're welcome, guys. Everybody who's saying thank you. Ashe. Oh.